Chapter 1. The Hook. The carriage rattled through the mountain pass, each jolt sending pain through my ribs where I'd been struck 2 days ago. My father's enforcers had not been gentle when they'd escorted me to the border. They wanted me to arrive bruised and broken. A message, they'd said. A reminder of my place. I pressed my palm against the window, watching the landscape transform from Ashvin's gentle green hills to Greymoor's jagged peaks. The air grew thinner, colder, carrying the scent of iron and pine. This territory was foreign to me in every way that mattered, and I was about to become its alpha's husband. The weight of my father's words still pressed against my skull. You will marry him. You will smile. You will be the perfect little bride, and you will not cause trouble. Do you understand me, Kael? I had smiled. I always smiled when father needed me to. The mask was as familiar as my own skin. The carriage slowed. Through the frost-rimmed glass, I saw Greymoor Keep rising from the mountainside like a beast carved from stone. It was brutal architecture, built for war, not beauty. Towers pierced the gray sky, and walls thick enough to withstand siege encircled the compound. Hundreds of wolves watched from the battlements, their eyes tracking my approach with undisguised hatred. I was the enemy, the son of their rival, the monster who had slaughtered 200 of their people. They weren't wrong, not entirely, but they had no idea what I truly was. The gates groaned open, and the carriage rolled into the courtyard. I gathered myself, smoothing the lines of my formal tunic. Silver embroidery traced the collar, the colors of House Blackwood. A humiliation, wearing my father's crest into this place. A reminder that I was his possession, his offering, his sacrifice. The carriage door opened, and cold air flooded in. I stepped out into the courtyard, and the hostile stares intensified. Wolves pressed close, growling low in their throats. Guards formed a corridor through the crowd, their hands on their weapons. Kept my face still. No fear. No defiance. Nothing they could use against me. The alpha approached, and the crowd fell silent. Darian Greywood was taller than I expected, broader in the shoulder, with dark auburn hair pulled back from a face that could have been carved by a master sculptor. His jaw was sharp, his cheekbones high, and his eyes, stormy gray with flecks of silver, held a cold assessment that made my instincts prickle. He wore the weight of his pack like armor. Every line of his body was rigid with barely controlled tension. I could see the fury in him, banked but burning. This was the man I would marry. Kael Blackwood. His voice was deep, measured, with an edge of steel. Welcome to Greymoor. Alpha Greywood. I inclined my head, the smallest acknowledgement. Thank you for receiving me. His eyes flickered at the formality. He had expected something else. Fear, perhaps. Or defiance. What he got was nothing. The ceremony was brief and cold. We stood before the moon priestess in the keep's great hall, surrounded by Greymoor's elite. Torches flickered along the walls, casting long shadows. The priestess spoke the old words, binding us under the moon pact, invoking the mother's blessing on our union. I met Darian's eyes through the ritual. His gaze was searching, hungry for some crack in my composure. I gave him nothing. By the will of the Moon Mother and the laws of the pact, I pronounce you bound. The words sealed my fate. I was Darian Greywood's husband. A political solution to a massacre I had personally committed. The formal dinner passed in a blur of cold looks and whispered insults. I ate mechanically, tasting nothing. Darian sat at the head of the table, a specter of tension, barely acknowledging my presence. He spoke with his council, his sister, the elders. They plotted and schemed around me as if I were furniture. I smiled when required. I said nothing. It was late when a servant led me to my chambers. The room was grand but cold, with a massive bed that felt more like a cage. I stood by the window, staring out at the mountains, and let my mask slip. I remembered Silverfen. The screams. The blood. The faces of the dead. 200 wolves, but not all were innocent. The ones who had run the place, who had tortured and killed and enslaved, they had deserved what came for them. But there had been prisoners too. Innocent wolves caught in a nightmare they hadn't created. I had killed them anyway. I had burned them all. The door opened behind me. I didn't turn. I knew his scent now, pine and steel, with something darker beneath it. "You knew I was coming," Darian said. The door clicked shut. We were alone. "I am your husband," I replied, still facing the window. "It would be strange if you didn't visit." "Don't." His voice was low, dangerous. "Don't pretend this is anything other than what it is." I turned slowly, meeting his gaze. He stood across the room, his body coiled with tension. His hands were clenched at his sides. The fury I had seen earlier was now fully unleashed in his eyes. "I want the truth," he said, "and I will not accept any more lies." "Truth about what?" "The massacre." He took a step closer. "You're the son of the Alpha who's been threatening war for years. Your people attacked our settlement. 200 wolves died in a single night. Evidence points to your territory. Your father denies it." "Of course he does. But I know you're involved." Darian's voice dropped lower. "I can feel it. I can see it in the way you hold yourself. You know something." I smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "I know everything," I said softly. His composure cracked. "Tell me what happened. Tell me who ordered the attack." "No one ordered it." His eyes widened. "What?" I met his gaze, letting him see the truth I had carried alone for too long. "No one ordered the attack. Not my father. Not your pack. Not the coalition." "Then who?" "Me." I spoke the word clearly, watching the color drain from his face. "I carried out the attack. I led the operation. I burned Silverfen to the ground." Silence. The room seemed to hold its breath. Darian stared at me, his face a mask of shock and something else, something darker. Disbelief warred with recognition. He had suspected. He had known I was involved. But he hadn't expected this. "You're lying," he breathed. "I never lie." I stepped closer, invading his space. 200 wolves, Alpha Greywood. But not all of them were innocent. Silverfen wasn't a border settlement. It was a prison. Your people, my people, wolves from everywhere. They were taken, enslaved, tortured. And when I discovered it and reported it, no one acted. Not my father. Not the coalition. So I acted myself. Darian's eyes blazed. "You murdered innocent wolves. Some were innocent." I didn't flinch. "And some were monsters. I burned the prison to the ground, and I burned the monsters with it. The innocent were collateral damage." I paused, letting the weight of my words settle. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect understanding. I only expect you to ask the question you're too afraid to voice." "Which question?" I leaned closer, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "Who knew?" I whispered. "Who knew what Silverfen really was? And why did no one help them?" Darian's expression shifted, not anger, but something more complicated. Disgust, certainly. But beneath it all, dawning realization. He had suspicions of his own. He had seen the cracks in his own pack's leadership. He had wondered, perhaps, if the truth was worse than he could imagine. I stepped back. I destroyed Silverfen to silence the evidence. But I didn't destroy the proof of what happened there. I have it all. Names, dates, testimonies from survivors. I tilted my head. And there are names on that list from Greymoor. I walked past him, heading for the door. "Good night, husband. Sleep well. Tomorrow we have much to discuss." I didn't see the expression on his face as I left. But I heard his sharp intake of breath, and I knew I had planted the seed. The future was uncertain. Or loomed. Enemies closed in from all sides. And I was now married to the wolf whose people I had butchered. But for the first time in months, I felt something other than cold fury stirring in my chest. Chapter 2, Collision. I didn't sleep. The chamber was too cold, too foreign, too quiet. Every shadow seemed to move, every creak of the ancient keep sounded like footsteps approaching. I lay on the massive bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the confession I had just made. Darian's face haunted me. The shock, the disgust. But beneath it all, that flicker of recognition. He had suspected something was wrong with Silverfen. He had seen the cracks in his own pack's leadership. I had given him the first piece of the puzzle. Now I had to trust that he would follow the thread. Dawn crept through the frost-covered windows, pale and gray. I rose, dressed in simple clothes, no more formal tunics, no more silverwood crest. I was no one's pawn today. The keep was quiet as I made my way to the great hall. Servants moved in the shadows, their eyes averted. They knew who I was. They knew what I had done. I could feel their hatred like a physical weight. But I had felt hatred before. It no longer touched me. Darian was already in the hall, standing before the massive fireplace. He hadn't slept either. I could see it in the dark circles beneath his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. His gray eyes found me as I entered, and something flickered in their depths. Not hatred. Something more complicated. "Leave us," he said to the servants. They scattered like leaves before a storm. The doors closed. We were alone. "I've been thinking about what you said," Darian began. His voice was rough, like he'd been arguing with himself all night. "About Silverfen. And I want to see the evidence." I felt a small, cold satisfaction. He hadn't dismissed me. He hadn't reported me. He was willing to listen. I walked closer, stopping a few feet away. "You understand what I'm offering you. This evidence implicates people in your pack. Powerful people. I know. Your council. Your elders. Possibly your own family." His jaw tightened. "I know. The moment I show you this, you become complicit. You can't unsee it. You can't pretend it didn't happen. If you try to bury it, you become as guilty as they are." Darian's eyes blazed. "I'm not guilty of anything. I didn't know what was happening in Silverfen. If I had, you would have done nothing." I said it without cruelty, just as a statement of fact. "You couldn't have. The system won't let you. That's why I burned it. Because the system failed." He flinched like I'd struck him. I pulled a small leather pouch from my pocket, holding it out. Inside were names, dates, locations. Testimonies from survivors. Proof of the atrocities committed at Silverfen. "These are copies," I said. "The originals are hidden. If something happens to me, they will be revealed to the coalition." Darian took the pouch, his fingers brushing mine. The touch was brief, but I felt it like a spark. He opened the pouch, scanning the contents. His face went pale as he read. "I know some of these names," he said slowly. They're respected members of the community." "Respected monsters," I corrected. "They were the ones running Silverfen. They were the ones torturing wolves from other territories. They were the ones who reported nothing, because the prisoners were being sent to them by powerful people." "Who?" "The coalition for one. Certain alphas. My father." Darian looked up sharply. "Your father?" "He knew." I kept my voice flat. "He knew everything. He didn't stop it because the prisoners were being used for labor. Cheap labor. Territory expansion. He benefited from their suffering." Darian's hands shook slightly. "And you killed him?" "I killed everyone in Silverfen." I met his eyes. "I would do it again." Silence stretched between us. Outside, the wind howled against the walls. Darian closed his eyes, exhaling slowly. When he opened them, I saw something I hadn't expected. Understanding. "I believe you," he said. "I don't want to. I want to hate you for what you did. But I believe you." "Why?" "Because I've been investigating my father's death for 5 years." He stepped closer. "And I've found evidence that someone in my pack is involved in something much larger than we ever imagined. I just didn't know what. Now you do." "Now I do." Something shifted between us. Not trust, not yet. But perhaps the beginning of it. "Will you help me?" Darian asked. "Will you work with me to expose the truth?" I considered the question carefully. This was what I had hoped for. This was why I hadn't simply denied involvement or escaped into the night. "Yes," I said. "But you need to understand what you're asking. There are people in your territory who will kill to keep this secret. They've already tried to kill me." Darian's eyes narrowed. "When?" 3 nights ago. Someone followed me from the border crossing." I touched my ribs, remembering the blow that had landed there. They didn't expect me to fight back. Were they wolves? Human form. Wearing coalition colors. Darian's expression darkened. The coalition. They're involved. Deeply involved. This goes beyond our territories, beyond our packs. Silverfen was just one node in a much larger network. I paused. I have evidence that implicates coalition leadership. But getting to them? It's impossible alone. Exactly. Darian looked at me for a long moment. The firelight played across his face, softening the hard lines of his jaw. Then we'll do it together, he said. You and me. We'll tear this whole thing down. I should have felt satisfaction. Instead, I felt something unexpected. Because for the first time in years, I was not alone. And I didn't know what to do with that. Darian's hand reached out, resting on my shoulder. The contact was warm, steady. Grounding. You're shaking, he observed. I'm not used to this, I admitted. Working with someone. Trusting someone. Neither am I. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. But I'm willing to learn. The doors burst open. Seraphine Greywood stood in the entrance, her face pale and her eyes wide. She had her brother's sharp features, though softer, and the same gray eyes. Darian, she said, her voice tight. You need to see this. There's been another attack. My blood went cold. Where? Darian demanded. Shadowfen. She looked at me, hatred clear in her gaze. A coalition outpost. The same as Silverfen. Who attacked it? We don't know. She glanced back at the corridor, where voices were rising in panic. The entire outpost was burned. Everyone inside is dead. I stepped forward, meeting her gaze. The prisoners. What prisoners? The ones they were keeping. I watched her face carefully. Shadowfen was a transfer point for Silverfen. If it was destroyed, someone knew the prisoners were there. Seraphine's expression shifted. Confusion. Recognition. And then slowly dawning horror. How do you know about Shadowfen? She whispered. Because I was the one who reported it to the coalition. I looked at Darian. A month ago. Before Silverfen. I gave them the location, the names, the evidence. And they did nothing. Darian's eyes blazed. You think they destroyed it to cover their tracks? I think they want to silence anyone who might speak. The survivors are dead. Everyone who knew the truth is dead. Outside, the wind howled again, rattling the windows. Greymoor Keep stood surrounded by enemies on all sides. And I was trapped in the middle of it all, with a wolf who was rapidly becoming more than a political ally. Darian met my eyes. In that moment, I saw the same fear I felt reflected back at me. We were in this together now, whether we liked it or not. Seraphine, Darian said, his voice steady despite everything. Gather the council. We have much to discuss. We can't trust them, I said quietly. Some of them are involved. I know. He turned to face the door. But we need to see who reacts. Who's scared. Who's eager to cover this up. That's where we'll find our enemies. I nodded slowly. It was a good plan. A political plan. The kind of plan I had spent years crafting. Let me know what you find, I said. Darian paused at the door, looking back at me. Where will you be? In my chambers. Waiting. I met his eyes. I'm not going anywhere, Alpha Greywood. I have nowhere to go. He studied me for a moment longer. Then he nodded once and followed his sister out the door. I stood alone in the great hall, the fire crackling beside me. The game had begun. And I was playing with a partner for the first time. I wasn't sure if I could trust him. I wasn't sure if I could trust anyone. But I was sure of one thing. Whatever came next, I would face it. Even if it killed me. Chapter 3, Growing Tension. 3 days passed like a slow poison. Darian held council meetings that I was not invited to. I heard the murmurs through the walls, the raised voices, the accusations flying like arrows. Greymoor's elders demanded my head. They wanted me tried for Silverfen. They wanted war with Ashfen. Darian refused. I stayed in my chambers, waiting. The evidence pouch was safe, hidden beneath a loose floorboard. I had copies scattered across the territory, buried in places only I knew. If I died, the truth would still surface. That was my insurance. But I didn't want to die. Not anymore. On the fourth night, Darian came to me. The door opened without warning, and he stood in the threshold, his face haggard. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days, who had been fighting battles on every front and losing ground. "The council wants you executed," he said without preamble. "I've bought us 3 more days." "Bought?" I rose from the window seat. "With what?" "My political capital. My reputation. My promise that you will be tried fairly before the coalition." He stepped inside, closing the door. "I've staked everything on you, Kael. Everything." I should have felt satisfied. Instead, I felt something uncomfortable twist in my chest. "You didn't have to," I said. "Yes, I did." He walked closer, his gray eyes burning. "Because I've been reading your evidence. I've been cross-referencing it with my own investigation. And I've discovered something I never expected." "What?" "Someone in my own family was involved." His voice cracked slightly. "My uncle, Orn. He was one of the administrators at Silverfen." I had known this. I had found his name in the records. But hearing Darian say it aloud was different. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "Don't be. He deserves whatever comes to him." Darian's hands clenched at his sides. "But it means I can't trust anyone in my pack. Not fully. Not anymore. Except me. Except you." He laughed bitterly. "The man who killed 200 wolves. The man I'm supposed to despise. Then why don't you?" Darian looked at me for a long moment. The firelight played across his face, softening the sharp edges of his features. "Because I've seen the evidence," he said. "Because I've read the testimonies. Because I know that if I had discovered what you discovered, I would have wanted to do the same thing." He paused. "I wouldn't have had the courage. But I would have wanted to." I felt something shift inside me. A crack in the armor I had built around my heart. "I didn't do it for courage," I said. "I did it because I had no other choice." "There's always a choice." "Not for me." I stepped closer, close enough that I could see the flecks of silver in his eyes. "I tried everything else. I reported it to my father. I reported it to the coalition. I wrote letters, gathered witnesses, begged for intervention. And no one listened. The prisoners were dying. Every day, more wolves were taken. So I chose to end it, even if that made me a monster." Darian's hand reached out, brushing against my cheek. The touch was so unexpected that I flinched. "Kael," he said softly, "I don't think you're a monster. You should." "I don't." His thumb traced my jawline, gentle. "I think you're someone who was forced into an impossible situation. I think you made a terrible choice because it was the only choice left. And I think—" He paused. "I think I'm starting to understand you. I should have pulled away. I should have kept my distance. But something in his eyes held me captive." "Why are you doing this?" I asked. "Why are you being kind to me?" "Because I see you." His voice dropped lower. "I see the weight you carry. I see the guilt and the pain and the rage. And I see someone who needs help, even if they don't want to admit it." I opened my mouth to deny it, but no words came. Darian's other hand found my shoulder, steadying me. "We're going to uncover the truth together," he said. "We're going to bring down the coalition, expose the corruption, and bring justice to everyone who suffered. But you can't do it alone. And neither can I." "I know," I whispered. "Then trust me. Just a little. Just enough to let me in." I closed my eyes, and for the first time in years, I let myself feel. The exhaustion. The grief. The desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, I didn't have to carry it all alone. "Okay," I said. "Okay." Darian pulled me into an embrace. His arms wrapped around me, strong and warm, holding me against his chest. I stiffened for a moment, then slowly relaxed into the contact. It was the first time someone had held me since I was a child. The first time I had let myself be held. "I won't let you fall," Darian murmured against my hair. "I promise." I didn't believe him. I couldn't. Trust was a luxury I couldn't afford. But in that moment, I allowed myself to hope. The next morning, we began our investigation in earnest. Darian and I spent hours in his study, poring over maps, ledgers, and witness testimonies. We cross-referenced names and dates, following the thread of corruption wherever it led. The picture that emerged was terrifying. Silverfen was just one node in a vast network. There were other settlements, other prisons, hidden across the territories. The coalition was running a slave trade, using captured wolves for forced labor, military expansion, and worse. And at the head of it all were the most powerful wolves in the region, including my father. The evidence is solid, Darian said, rubbing his temples. But we need more than evidence. We need witnesses. Survivors who can testify before the coalition. There are none left in Silverfen, I said. I made sure of that. But there might be others. Rogue wolves, escapees. Wolves who are hiding, afraid to come forward. I nodded slowly. I know someone. A wolf who survived Silverfen. He was taken from Ashfen, chained in the prison for 2 years before I freed him. Where is he now? Shadowfen. Hiding in the underground. Darian's eyes widened. But Shadowfen was destroyed. Exactly. He'll be scared. He'll need to trust us before he comes out. I met his gaze. And we need to move fast. The coalition is cleaning up loose ends. Before he could respond, the door burst open. Seraphine stood there, her face pale and streaked with tears. Darian, she gasped. It's Uncle Oren. He's dead. Darian rose sharply. What happened? Someone killed him. In his chambers. His throat was slit. She looked at me, her eyes filled with accusation. The guards found this beside his body. She held out a silver brooch. It was mine. I had left it in my chambers, carefully hidden. My blood ran cold. Someone is framing me, I said. Seraphine's eyes blazed with hatred. Liar. You killed him to silence him. No, He left a letter before he died. She cut me off. Confessing everything. He was going to testify before the coalition. He told me he was going to clear his name. And then you killed him. I didn't. Darian held up a hand. Enough. We need to think clearly. He's the enemy, Seraphine snarled. He's always been the enemy. He tricked you, manipulated you, and now he's murdering our pack members. I looked at Darian, searching for signs of doubt. He was staring at the brooch, his expression unreadable. Darian met my eyes. Kael, is this yours? Yes. Where was it? In my chambers, hidden beneath the floorboard. Someone must have found it and planted it. Convenient, Seraphine spat. Darian turned to his sister. Leave us. Now. Darian. Leave. Now. She hesitated, then stormed out, slamming the door behind her. We were alone. Darian studied me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. Tell me the truth, he said quietly. Did you kill my uncle? No. I met his gaze without flinching. He was a monster. But he was also a key witness. I wouldn't have killed him. Then who would? Someone who wants to silence him. Someone who wants to point the finger at me. I stepped closer. Someone who knew we were investigating. Darian's face went pale. The council. They knew I was looking into Oren. They tried to stop me. They didn't just try to stop you. I held up the brooch. They're framing me for murder. And if they succeed, you'll be executed before we can prove anything. Exactly. Outside, the sound of footsteps echoed in the corridor. Voices shouted, angry and demanding. The guards were coming for me. Darian grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the window. You need to leave. Now. What? The keep isn't safe for you anymore. They'll tear you apart. He opened the window, cold air rushing in. There's a path down the mountain. It leads to Shadowfen. Find your witness. Find any survivors you can. I stared at him. You're letting me go? I'm saving your life. His grip tightened on my arm. But I need you to promise me something. What? Come back. His gray eyes burned with intensity. Bring me the truth. Bring me the proof. And come back to me. I felt something crack inside me. I will, I said. I promise. Darian pulled me close, pressing his forehead against mine. Be safe, he whispered. Then he pushed me toward the window. I climbed onto the ledge, the wind whipping around me. Below, the mountains stretched into darkness. "Find me," Darian called as I jumped. And then I was falling, the cold air rushing past me, and everything else faded away. Chapter 4, The Midpoint Twist. The mountain was merciless. I fell through darkness, branches tearing at my clothes and skin. I hit the slope hard, rolling across frozen earth and jagged rock. Pain exploded through my shoulder, my ribs, my hip. I tumbled to a stop in a snowdrift, gasping for breath. For a long moment, I lay still, staring up at the gray sky. My body screamed with every heartbeat. But I was alive. I had survived. I forced myself to move, crawling through the snow toward the treeline. Behind me, voices echoed from the keep. They had discovered my escape. The hunt was beginning. I didn't stop. I couldn't. The path Darian had described was barely visible, a thread of disturbed snow winding down the mountainside. I followed it through the forest, weaving between ancient pines. My breath came in ragged gasps, each one a knife in my chest. I thought of Darian, the way he had held me, the promise in his eyes. Come back to me. I had to survive. I had to find the truth. I had to return to him. 2 days later, I reached Shadowfen. The settlement was a ruin. Blackened timber, ash-covered ground, the skeletal remains of buildings still smoking. The stench of death clung to everything. I moved through the wreckage, searching for any sign of life. The underground tunnels were hidden beneath a collapsed stable, accessible only through a narrow passage that I had to crawl through. The tunnels were dark and cold. Water dripped from the ceiling. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and fear. "Riven," I called softly. "It's me. Kael." Silence. Then a shuffling sound from deeper in the darkness. A figure emerged from the shadows. He was thin, ragged, with haunted eyes that had seen too much. Riven Darkwada, my childhood friend. The only survivor of Silverfen who still lived. "Kael?" His voice cracked. "I thought you were dead." "Almost." I stepped closer and he flinched. "I need your help, Riven. I need you to testify." He shook his head violently. "No. No, I can't. They'll kill me. They killed everyone else." "I know. But I can protect you. I have allies now." His eyes widened. "Allies? Who?" "Darian Greywood. The Alpha of Greymoor." Riven laughed bitterly. "The Alpha of Greymoor? The pack that ran Silverfen." "Some of them did. But not Darian. He's helping me expose the truth." "How can you trust him?" I paused. The question hung between us. "Because I have no choice," I said finally. "Because he's the only one who's shown me anything other than hatred. Because..." I swallowed. "Because I think he might be the only person who truly sees me." Riven studied me for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "I'll help you," he said. "But if this goes wrong..." "It won't." I reached out, gripping his shoulder. "I won't let it." We traveled through the night, heading back toward Greymoor. Riven was silent, his eyes constantly scanning the darkness for threats. I could feel his terror radiating from him like heat. "We need to stop," I said as dawn approached. "We're too exposed." We found shelter in a cave, hidden behind a waterfall. The sound of rushing water masked our conversation. "I have something to show you," Riven said. He pulled a bundle from his pack, unwrapping it carefully. Inside was a leather-bound journal, its pages stained with blood. "What is this?" "The records from Silverfen. The originals. I stole them before the fire." His eyes were wild. "I knew they would come in handy." I opened the journal, scanning the pages. Names, dates, locations. And at the very end, a list of the wolves who had been murdered in the settlement. Over 200 names, each one a life. But it was the last entry that made my blood run cold. Transfer orders approved by Coalition High Council. Prisoners 78 to 92 to be relocated to Shadowfen for processing. Authorization, the Hound. The Hound. Fenris. The Coalition's enforcer. He was involved, I breathed. He was one of them. Riven nodded. The hound was the one who gave the orders. He was their kid. I saw him. He walked through Silverfen like he owned the place. He was the one who destroyed Shadowfen, I realized. He's cleaning up the evidence. We need to stop him. We need to expose him to the Coalition. The Coalition is the problem. They're the ones running this whole thing. Riven's face went pale. Then who can we trust? I thought of Darian. The warmth in his eyes when he had held me. The promise in his voice. The only one we can trust, I said. We need to get back to Greymoor. We reached the keep at midnight. The gates were closed, the walls lined with guards. I approached cautiously, my hands raised. I need to see Darian Greywood, I called. I have information about the conspiracy. The guards exchanged glances. Then the gates swung open, and I was escorted inside. Darian met me in the great hall. He looked haggard, exhausted, but his eyes lit up when he saw me. Kael. He crossed the room in 3 quick strides, pulling me into an embrace. You came back. I promised. He pulled back, studying my face. You're hurt. I'll recover. I gestured to Riven, who stood nervously behind me. This is Riven Darkwater. He's a survivor of Silverfen. He has evidence. Darian's gaze shifted to Riven. Evidence of what? The Coalition's involvement, I said. The Hound. He was the one running the operation. Darian's face went pale. Fenris. He was there. He gave the orders. And he's the one who destroyed Shadowfen to cover his tracks. Darian turned to the guards. Leave us. No one enters. The guards filed out, closing the doors behind them. We stood in the firelight, the weight of our discovery pressing down on us. This changes everything, Darian said. The Coalition is the ultimate authority. If they're involved, then there's no one we can appeal to. We need to expose them. Publicly. In front of all the territories. How? Riven asked. They'll deny everything. They'll destroy the evidence. Not if we have proof. I held up the journal. These are the original records from Silverfen. Names. Dates. Orders. Signed by the Hound himself. Darian stared at the journal. That's enough to bring him down. But we need more. We need to implicate the entire Coalition. I know where we can get it. Riven's voice was trembling. The Coalition's main headquarters is in Sablehold. They keep records of everything in their vaults. If we can break in, that's suicide, Darian said. It's our only chance. Silence fell between us. I could see Darian weighing the options in his mind. There's the reward, the potential for disaster. I'll do it, I said finally. Darian turned to me. No. You'll be killed. Probably. But if I don't try, everything I've done will have been for nothing. I met his eyes. I've already lost everything. My family. My home. My innocence. I'm not afraid to die. I am. His voice cracked. I'm afraid of losing you. The words hung between us, heavy with meaning. Kael. He stepped closer, his hand reaching up to cup my face. I've spent the last few days terrified. Every moment you were gone, I was afraid you wouldn't come back. I was afraid the last words I said to you would be goodbye. They weren't. I'm here. But you're going to leave again. His thumb traced my cheek. You're going to walk into the lion's den, and I can't stop you. Yes, you can. You can come with me. His eyes widened. What? Come with me. We'll break into the Coalition's vaults together. We'll find the proof we need. And we'll bring them all down. Darian stared at me for a long moment. Then he laughed, a sound that was equal parts disbelief and exhilaration. You're insane, he said. Probably. But I think I'm insane enough to follow you. He pulled me into a kiss. It was fierce and desperate, the kind of kiss that said everything words couldn't. I felt his hands grip my waist, pulling me flush against him. I responded in kind, my fingers tangling in his hair, pulling him closer. When we broke apart, we were both breathing heavily. I can't lose you, Darian said. I won't. Then come with me. Stay by my side. And we'll make it through together. He nodded. Together. Behind us, Riven cleared his throat. I hate to interrupt, he said. But we have company. I turned. Through the window, I could see torches approaching the keep. Hundreds of them. A force larger than anything Greymoor could muster. The coalition, I breathed. They've come for us. Darian grabbed my hand. We need to move. Now. Where? Anywhere but here. He pulled me toward the door. Riven, follow us. We're going to survive this, all of us. We burst through the doors and into the chaos. War had come to Greymoor, and we had only one chance to stop it. Chapter 5, Everything Falls Apart. The courtyard erupted into chaos. Torches blazed against the night sky, hundreds of them marching toward Greymoor Keep. The coalition's forces moved with military precision, their ranks filled with wolves from every territory. At their head rode Fenris, the hound, his scarred face illuminated by firelight. They're surrounding the keep, Seraphine shouted, bursting through the doors. Darian, we need to. She stopped short, seeing Riven cowering behind me. Her eyes narrowed with suspicion. Who is this? A survivor, I said quickly. He has evidence. We need to get him to safety. There's no safety anymore. Seraphine grabbed her brother's arm. The coalition is demanding your surrender. They say you're harboring a fugitive, the murderer of Silverfen. Darian turned to me. They're talking about you. Of course they are. I felt cold fury settle in my chest. They've painted me as the villain so they can destroy anyone who knows the truth. What do we do? Riven's voice cracked. They'll kill us all. Not if we fight. Darian's gray eyes blazed with determination. Seraphine, rally the pack. We hold the keep. We don't surrender. Against the coalition? She shook her head. We'll be slaughtered. We'll be slaughtered anyway if we give in. He gripped her shoulders. Trust me, sister. I have a plan. She stared at him for a long moment. Then she nodded once and ran to gather the warriors. Darian turned to me. We need to get to Sablehold. Now. Through the coalition forces? There's a tunnel. Beneath the keep. It leads to the mountain pass. He grabbed my hand. We can escape while the coalition is focused on the keep. And leave your pack behind? They'll hold the keep. They're prepared. But we're the ones who can end this. His grip tightened. We find the proof. We expose the truth. We save everyone. I looked at Riven. He was terrified, his eyes darting toward every shadow. But he nodded slowly. I'll come, he whispered. I'll do whatever it takes. The tunnel was dark and narrow, barely wide enough for one person at a time. Water dripped from the ceiling, and the air smelled of damp earth and old stone. I led the way, my hands brushing against the rough walls. Behind me, I could hear Darian's steady breathing. Riven followed last, his footsteps hesitant. We're almost there, I said. The exit is just ahead. I pushed against a stone panel, and it swung open, revealing the night sky. We emerged onto a rocky ledge, the mountains stretching before us. Below, I could see the coalition's forces surrounding the keep. We need to move fast, Darian said. They'll discover we're gone soon. We ran through the darkness, following the narrow path that wound down the mountain. The wind howled around us, whipping my hair across my face. My ribs ached, my shoulder burned, but I didn't slow down. We reached the forest at the base of the mountain. The trees provided cover, their branches reaching toward the sky like skeletal fingers. I paused, catching my breath. Which way to Sablehold? Riven asked. North. Through the Shadowfen forest. I pointed into the darkness. It's a day's journey if we don't stop. We don't stop, Darian said firmly. We pressed on. Dawn broke over the forest, casting pale light through the trees. We had been running for hours, and exhaustion was beginning to set in. My body screamed for rest, but I couldn't stop. Not yet. We need to rest, Riven panted. Just for a moment. No. I pushed forward. The coalition is behind us, Darian interrupted. We lost them at the mountain pass. We can afford a few minutes. He grabbed my arm, pulling me to a halt. I stumbled, my legs giving out beneath me. Darian caught me, easing me down onto a fallen log. "You're pushing yourself too hard," he said. "You'll collapse." "I can't collapse. Not yet. You can rest for 5 minutes." He knelt in front of me, his hands cupping my face. "Look at me, Kael. Look at me." I met his eyes. The gray had softened, filled with something that made my chest ache. "You're not alone anymore," he said softly. "You don't have to carry everything by yourself." "I know." I swallowed hard. "But I'm so used to it. I don't know how to stop." "Then let me help you." His thumb traced my jawline. "Let me share the weight." I closed my eyes, leaning into his touch. For a moment I let myself feel the exhaustion, the pain, the fear, but also the warmth of his hands, the steadiness of his presence. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay." We rested for a few minutes, Riven huddled nearby. Then we pushed on. The forest grew denser as we traveled north. The trees were ancient, their branches interlocking above us to block out the sky. The air grew colder, and I could see my breath in the dim light. "Something's wrong," Riven said suddenly. I stopped, listening. The forest had gone silent. No birds, no insects, just the sound of our breathing. "They're here," I breathed. Figures emerged from the shadows. Wolves in coalition colors, their eyes gleaming with cold purpose. They surrounded us, forming a circle of teeth and claws. "Weapons down," one of them ordered. "You're coming with us." I reached for the knife at my belt, but Darian's hand stopped me. "Don't," he said quietly. "There are too many." "Then we surrender?" I couldn't keep the disbelief from my voice. "We survive. We find another way." The guards moved in, disarming us and binding our hands. They were efficient, brutal, showing no mercy. "We've been tracking you since the keep," one of them said. "The hound wants you alive. For now." They marched us through the forest, our feet stumbling over roots and rocks. I kept my eyes on the ground, searching for any opportunity to escape. But there was none. They were too many, too watchful. We emerged from the forest into a clearing. In the center stood a massive stone structure, the Coalition's forward command post. Banners bearing the Coalition crest fluttered from the walls. And waiting at the entrance was Fenris. He was tall, scarred, with eyes like frozen steel. His presence radiated power and cruelty. "Kael Blackwood," he said, his voice a low rumble. "We finally meet face to face." "Fenris." I kept my voice steady. "I should have known you'd be the one hunting us. Your arrogance is remarkable." He stepped closer, his gaze flicking to Darian. "Alpha Greywood. Disappointing to see you've chosen the side of the murderer." "Your side is the one that's murdering innocent wolves," Darian spat. "We have proof. We have witnesses. You have nothing." Fenris's smile was cold. "The evidence you think you have is gone. The journal you stole from Silverfen was burned when we captured your friend Riven." I turned to look at Riven. His face was ashen. "I didn't," he started. "He didn't have to do anything," Fenris interrupted. "We've known about him for weeks. He was always going to lead us to you." Riven's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry. They threatened to kill my family. They said they'd—" "It's not your fault," I said softly. "Such loyalty." Fenris laughed. "It's touching, really. But it won't save you." He waved a hand, and the guards dragged us toward the command post. I struggled, but their grip was iron. "The journal is gone," Fenris said. "Your witness is compromised. And both of you will be executed for treason against the Coalition." "Then why haven't you killed us already?" I demanded. "Because your execution will be public. A message to anyone else who might think of challenging the Coalition's authority." His smile widened. "But first, we have a few questions." The guards threw us into separate cells. The doors slammed shut, leaving me in darkness. I sat against the cold stone wall, my hands still bound. I could hear Darian's voice from the adjacent cell, shouting for the guards, demanding to see me. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in years, I let myself weep. I had lost everything. The evidence. The witness. The chance to expose the truth. Darian was imprisoned because of me. Riven had been broken by fear. I had failed. I had failed everyone. And I was going to die. Chapter 6, Fighting Back. The darkness swallowed me whole. I didn't know how long I had been in the cell. Hours. Time had lost all meaning. The only sounds were the drip of water and the distant howl of wolves outside. I had stopped crying. There were no tears left. Just a cold emptiness that settled in my chest like frost. I thought of my mother. She had died when I was young, taken by illness that no healer could cure. I remembered her face, soft and kind, the way she used to brush my hair back from my forehead. "You're going to do great things, Kael. I know it." I had tried. I had tried so hard to be good, to be worthy of her faith. But somewhere along the way, I had lost myself. I had become a weapon, a tool, a monster. And now I was going to die alone in the dark. The cell door opened. I looked up, expecting guards, expecting Fenris. Instead, I saw Seraphine Greywood. She was dressed in coalition colors, her hair pulled back, her face set in grim determination. She held a key in one hand and a knife in the other. "Get up," she said. "We don't have much time." I stared at her. "I'm getting you out of here." She unlocked my shackles, her movements quick and efficient. "Darian told me everything before they captured him. About Silverfen. About the coalition. About what you really did. You believe him?" "I believe my brother." She grabbed my arm, pulling me to my feet. "And I believe you didn't kill Uncle Oren. Fenris did. I found the proof." "Where's Darian?" "Riven is freeing him as we speak. The guards are distracted. We have a small window." I followed her through the corridors, my legs weak from disuse. The command post was a maze of stone passages, lit by flickering torches. Seraphine moved with purpose, leading me toward the exit. We reached a side door, and she pushed it open, revealing the night sky. The forest stretched before us, dark and welcoming. "Go," she said. "Find Riven and Darian. They'll be waiting in the treeline." "What about you?" "I'm staying behind. I need to create a distraction." She pressed something into my hand. A small leather pouch. "This is the evidence I found. It's not the journal, but it's enough. Names, dates, orders. Everything we need to bring down the coalition." I stared at the pouch. "Seraphine, don't thank me." She smiled, a sad expression that didn't reach her eyes. "Just make sure my brother survives. He's all I have left." Then she pushed me through the door and closed it behind me. I ran. I found Darian in the treeline, hidden behind a massive oak. Riven was with him, his face pale and trembling. "Kael." Darian pulled me into his arms, holding me tight. "You're alive." "I'm here." I clung to him, feeling his warmth against my cold skin. "We need to move. Now." "Where's Seraphine?" "She's creating a distraction." I pulled back, showing him the pouch. "She gave me this. Evidence. Enough to bring them down." Darian stared at the pouch, then back toward the command post. His face was torn between hope and fear. "She'll be fine," I said. "She's strong." "I know." He took a deep breath. "Let's go. Sable hold. We end this." We traveled through the night, pushing through exhaustion and pain. The forest gave way to open plains, then to the rocky foothills that surrounded Sablehold. The city rose before us at dawn, a marvel of architecture built on the surface of a vast lake. Towers of white stone reached toward the sky, connected by bridges that arched over the water. It was beautiful, pristine, the perfect symbol of coalition power. And beneath it all, corruption festered like a wound. "We need to find the vaults," I said. "The coalition's records are kept in the central tower. Heavily guarded." "How do we get in?" Riven asked. "I know a way." I led them toward the shoreline, where a series of tunnels ran beneath the city. The builders were wolves. They created escape routes in case of siege. Not many people know about them. We descended into the darkness, following the narrow passages. Water lapped at our feet, cold and dark. The tunnel walls were slick with moss. We emerged in the basement of the central tower. Stone columns rose around us, and the air was thick with the scent of old paper and dust. "The vaults are just ahead," I whispered. "Stay close." We crept through the corridors, avoiding the occasional guard patrol. The evidence pouch was heavy in my pocket, a constant reminder of what was at stake. We reached the vault door. It was massive, made of iron and steel, sealed with a complex lock. "How do we open it?" Darian asked. I pulled a small tool from my belt, a pick I had stolen from a guard during my escape. "I've been planning this for years. I know every mechanism." I worked quickly, my fingers moving with practiced precision. The lock clicked, and the door swung open. The vault was filled with records. Books, scrolls, ledgers, stacked floor to ceiling. It was a historian's dream and a conspiracy's nightmare. "Find anything with the coalition crest," I said. "Anything that mentions Silverfen or Shadowfen." We searched frantically, pulling documents from shelves, scanning pages for names and dates. The evidence piled up around us, damning and undeniable. "Here." Darian held up a thick ledger. "This is a list of all the prisoners. Names, territories, dates of capture. Over 1,000 wolves. And here." I found a folder filled with letters. Correspondence between coalition leadership and the administrators of Silverfen. They knew everything. They approved everything. "This is it." Riven's voice cracked with emotion. "This is the proof we need." We gathered the documents, stuffing them into bags we found in the vault. It was more than enough to expose the truth. "We need to leave," I said. "Before." The door slammed shut behind us. I turned, my heart sinking. Fenris stood in the entrance, flanked by a dozen guards. His smile was cold and triumphant. "Did you really think I wouldn't be watching?" He stepped closer, his eyes gleaming. "I knew you would come here. I've been waiting." "You're too late," Darian said, holding up the documents. "We have the proof. We're going to expose everything." "To whom?" Fenris laughed. "The coalition controls everything. The council, the courts, the territories. You have nowhere to go. We'll find a way. You'll be dead before you can try." He raised his hand, signaling the guards. "Take them. Kill the witness. I want the alphas alive for public execution." The guards advanced. I grabbed Darian's hand, pulling him toward the back of the vault. "There's another exit. Behind the shelves. Follow me." We ran, dodging through the maze of documents. The guards chased us, their footsteps echoing in the confined space. I found the hidden door, pushing it open. It led to a narrow passage that spiraled upward. "Go!" I shouted. We climbed, the guards close behind. The passage ended at a small room with a window overlooking the lake. Below, the city spread out, peaceful and unaware. "We're trapped," Riven panted. "There's nowhere left to go." I looked at Darian. His face was set with determination. "Then we jump," he said. "What?" "Into the lake. We swim for the shore." He grabbed my hand. "Trust me." I nodded. Together. We climbed onto the windowsill, the cold wind whipping around us. Below, the water glimmered in the moonlight. "On 3, Darian said. 1, 2, 3. We jumped. The water was freezing, knocking the breath from my lungs. I sank beneath the surface, disoriented and panicking. Then strong hands grabbed me, pulling me upward. I broke the surface, gasping for air. Darian was beside me, his arm wrapped around my waist. "Swim," he said. "Swim for the shore." We fought through the icy water, our limbs burning with exertion. Behind us, shouts echoed from the tower. Fenris's guards were watching, but they couldn't reach us. We reached the shore, collapsing onto the rocky beach. I lay there, gasping, shivering, barely conscious. Darian pulled me into his arms, holding me close. "We made it. We made it. We have the evidence," I whispered. "We can expose them. We will." He pressed his forehead against mine. Together. Riven staggered up beside us, clutching the documents. His face was pale but triumphant. "We need to get to the council," he said, "before they find us again." I nodded, forcing myself to stand. My body screamed with exhaustion, But I couldn't stop. Not now. We gathered the documents and began the long walk toward the council chambers. The end was coming, and I was going to make sure the truth was heard, no matter what it cost me. Chapter 7. The Final Confrontation. The council chambers rose before us like a monument to everything we were fighting against. White marble columns, gold-trimmed arches, banners bearing the crests of every territory in the region. It was a place of power and corruption, where the fate of wolves was decided by wolves who had long forgotten what it meant to be part of a pack. We had arrived at dawn, drenched and exhausted, the evidence clutched to our chests like a lifeline. The guards at the entrance had tried to stop us, but Darian's presence as Alpha of Greymoor had given us passage. Now we stood before the council, a dozen of the most powerful wolves in existence. They sat in a semicircle, their faces carved from stone. At the center was the High Counselor, an ancient wolf with silver eyes and a cold smile. Alpha Greywood, the High Counselor said, his voice dripping with false warmth. We did not expect you. And you have brought guests. Evidence, Darian said firmly. We have evidence of coalition involvement in atrocities across the territories. The massacres at Silverfen and Shadowfen were not rogue actions. They were ordered and approved by coalition leadership. The chamber erupted into murmurs. Counselors exchanged glances, some shocked, some calculating. The High Counselor raised a hand, silencing the noise. This is a serious accusation, Alpha Greywood. Do you have proof? Darian gestured to me. I stepped forward, holding up the documents we had retrieved from the vault. Names, dates, orders, all bearing the coalition crest and the signature of Fenris. These are the original records, I said, my voice steady despite my exhaustion. They detail every prisoner taken, every atrocity committed, every order given. And they implicate coalition leadership directly. The High Counselor's silver eyes narrowed. And who are you to bring such evidence? I am Kael Blackwood, son of Alpha Leander Blackwood. And I was the one who destroyed Silverfen. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Counselors recoiled, their faces twisted with horror and outrage. You admit to murder? The High Counselor asked. I admit to justice. I met his gaze without flinching. Silverfen was not a border settlement. It was a prison. Wolves from across the territories were taken, enslaved, tortured. I discovered this, reported it to the coalition, and was ignored. So I acted. You committed mass murder. I ended a system of suffering that you allowed to continue. I stepped closer, the documents in my hand. And I have the proof to back it up. The High Counselor's composure cracked. For a moment, I saw fear in his silver eyes. Those documents are forgeries, he said, fabricated to discredit the coalition. Are they? I pulled a single paper from the stack. This one is signed by you, High Counselor. It authorizes the transfer of prisoners from Silverfen to Shadowfen for processing. Processing? That's what you called murder? The chamber erupted again. Counselors shouted over each other, accusations flying. I looked at Darian. He nodded once, steady and unwavering. We have witnesses, I said loudly, cutting through the noise. Survivors of Silverfen who will testify to the conditions there. Wolves who were taken from their homes, their families, their packs. Wolves who were enslaved and murdered while the coalition looked the other way. Riven stepped forward, trembling but determined. I was there, he said, his voice cracking. I was imprisoned in Silverfen for 2 years. I saw everything. And I know the High Counselor was involved. The High Counselor's face went pale. He's telling the truth, another voice cut in. The doors to the chamber opened, and Seraphine Greywood strode in, flanked by warriors from Greymoor. I found additional evidence. Correspondence between the High Counselor and the administrators of Silverfen. It was hidden in his private quarters. She held up a leather-bound folder. This implicates the High Counselor directly, along with several other coalition leaders. The chamber fell silent. The High Counselor stared at the evidence, his face a mask of barely controlled rage. You think this will change anything? He said, his voice low and dangerous. The coalition controls everything. The territories, the courts, the military. You have no power here. We have the truth, Darian said. And the truth is more powerful than any weapon. The High Counselor laughed. You naive fool. The truth only matters if people believe it. And I will make sure no one believes a word you say. He raised his hand, and guards flooded the chamber. They surrounded us, their weapons drawn. I have been building this system for decades, the High Counselor continued. I will not let a handful of misguided idealists destroy it. Seize them. All of them. But the guards hesitated. They looked at the evidence, at the documents scattered across the floor. They looked at the faces of the witnesses, the survivors, the wolves who had suffered. Seize them, the High Counselor shouted. Don't. A new voice cut through the tension. I turned to see an elder counselor rise from his seat. He was old, wizened, with eyes that had seen centuries of injustice. I have served on this council for 40 years, he said slowly, and I have seen many things. But I have never seen evidence this damning. If what the Alpha says is true, if the coalition has truly been behind these atrocities, then we cannot allow this to continue. The High Counselor must answer for his crimes, another counselor added. Then another. Soon, half the council had risen to support us. The High Counselor's face twisted with fury. You dare. We dare, the elder counselor said firmly. We will not be complicit in murder. The guards lowered their weapons. I watched as the High Counselor was seized, dragged from his seat, his protests drowned by the roar of the chamber. Fenris was captured too, his cold eyes fixed on me as they bound his hands. Take them to the cells, the elder counselor commanded. We will hold a full trial. All evidence will be examined. Justice will be done. The chamber emptied, leaving me standing in the center, surrounded by the remnants of the evidence. I was shaking, my body racked with exhaustion and relief. Darian was beside me in an instant, his arms wrapping around me. You did it, he murmured against my ear. You did it. We did it. I clung to him, feeling the warmth of his body against mine. Together. He pulled back, cupping my face in his hands. His gray eyes were shining, filled with something I had never seen before. Kael, he said softly, I know we've been through so much. I know we started as enemies, forced together by politics and circumstance. But somewhere along the way, you became more than a political partner. You became... He paused, searching for the words. The reason I believe in justice again, he finally said. The reason I believe in hope. The reason I believe in love. I stared at him, my heart pounding. Darian, I love you, Kael. He said it simply, without hesitation. I know it's too soon. I know we've barely had time to breathe. But I can't deny it anymore. I love you. I felt tears prick my eyes. For so long, I had been alone, carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. And now, here was someone who saw me, all of me, and loved me anyway. I love you too, I whispered. I don't know when it happened. But it did. You broke through every wall I built. You made me believe that I could be more than a weapon. Darian pulled me into a kiss, deep and tender, saying everything words couldn't. I melted into him, my hands fisting in his tunic, my heart soaring. Alpha Greywood. The elder counselor approached, clearing his throat. I don't mean to interrupt, but there are matters we need to discuss. The High Counselor's trial will take place in 3 days. We will need both of you to testify. Darian pulled back, his arms still wrapped around my waist. Of course, we'll be there. The elder counselor nodded and departed. We were alone in the chamber, surrounded by the remnants of the battle we had won. What happens now? I asked. Now we build something new. Darian turned to me, his eyes soft. Together. No more secrets. No more fighting alone. I nodded slowly. Together. He kissed my forehead, gentle and reverent. Let's go home, Kael. Let's go home. We returned to Greymoor Keep to a hero's welcome. The pack had heard the news. The High Counselor had fallen, the coalition was in chaos, and their alpha had emerged victorious. They cheered as we passed, their earlier hatred transformed into something like acceptance. Seraphine met us at the gates, her face beaming. "I knew you could do it," she said, embracing her brother. "I always believed in you." "And I believed in you," he replied. "Without your evidence, we never would have won." She turned to me, her expression softening. "Kael, I'm sorry for how I treated you. I was wrong." "You were protecting your pack," I said. "I understand." "Still." She reached out, squeezing my hand. "You're family now. And I'm glad." The words settled in my chest like a bomb. For the first time in years, I felt like I belonged somewhere. The trial of the High Counselor lasted 3 days. Witness after witness came forward. Survivors of Silverfen and Shadowfen, their testimonies painting a picture of horror and corruption. Darian and I presented the evidence we had gathered, each document a nail in the coalition's coffin. The High Counselor was found guilty on all charges. Fenris too. Their sentences were severe: exile, imprisonment, the stripping of all titles and power. Justice had been served. That night, Darian and I stood on the balcony of the keep, looking out at the mountains. The moon was full, casting silver light across the snow. "It's over," I said softly. "Not completely." Darian's hand found mine. "There's still so much work to do. Rebuilding the territories. Restoring trust. Creating a new system that doesn't allow this kind of corruption. But we'll do it together." He turned to me, his gray eyes soft. "Together." I leaned into him, resting my head on his shoulder. The weight of the past months finally lifted, leaving behind something like peace. "I never thought I'd feel this way," I admitted. "Happy. Hopeful." "Neither did I." He pressed a kiss to my hair. "But I'm glad I do. I'm glad I have you." We stood there in the moonlight, two wolves who had found each other in the midst of chaos, two souls who had learned to trust and love despite everything. The road ahead would be difficult. There were still enemies, still challenges, still wounds to heal. But for the first time, I faced the future without fear. Because I was not alone. And I never would be again. Chapter 8: Resolution. 3 months passed like a slow tide, washing away the debris of the old world and carving new paths through the wreckage. The coalition was dismantled. The High Counselor and Fenris were imprisoned in the deepest cells of Sablehold, their names now synonymous with treachery. New leadership emerged, counselors who had stood with us, wolves who believed in justice and accountability. The territories began the slow, painful process of healing. Greymoor became the center of the new order. Darian's reputation had grown beyond measure. He was no longer just the alpha of a northern territory. He was the wolf who had exposed the truth, who had risked everything to bring down the corrupt. Wolves from across the region flocked to him, seeking guidance, seeking hope. And I stood beside him. It still felt strange. The weight I had carried for so long, the guilt, the rage, the isolation, had begun to ease. Not vanished entirely. Some wounds were too deep to heal completely. But I was learning to live with them, to carry them without being crushed. I was learning to live again. The new treaty was signed on the first day of spring. Counselors from every territory gathered in Sablehold, their banners flying in the warm breeze. The lake glittered beneath the sun, and the city was alive with celebration. Darian stood at the center of it all, his hand clasped in mine. We had become symbols of the new era, the wolf who had burned down the old world and the wolf who had helped him build something better. "The territories are united," the elder counselor announced. "The Moon Pact is renewed. And justice has been served." Cheers erupted from the crowd. Wolves howled their approval, their voices rising to the sky. I looked at Darian and he looked back at me. In his gray eyes, I saw everything: the fear, the hope, the love that had grown between us against all odds. "We did it," I said softly. "We did." He squeezed my hand. "And we'll keep doing it. Together." The ceremony ended, and we returned to Greymoor Keep. The journey was long, but we took our time, stopping at villages along the way. The people were wary at first, uncertain of the stranger who had once been their enemy. But they saw the way Darian looked at me, the way I looked at him, and slowly, their suspicion faded. He's one of us now, I heard a villager whisper as we passed. He's Pak. The words settled in my chest like a bomb. We reached the keep at sunset. Seraphine was waiting at the gates, her face bright with joy. She embraced us both, pulling us into a tight hug. I missed you, she said. The keep was too quiet without you. We're back now, Darian replied. For good. She pulled back, studying my face. And you, Kael? Are you staying? I nodded slowly. I have nowhere else to go. And I glanced at Darian. I don't want to be anywhere else. Seraphine smiled, a genuine expression that softened her sharp features. Good. Because you're family now. And we take care of our own. That night, Darian and I stood on the balcony, looking out at the mountains. The moon was full, casting silver light across the snow. It was the same moon that had watched over us during the massacre, during the marriage, during the battle. But tonight it felt different. Softer. Like a blessing rather than a judgment. I never thought I'd be here, I admitted. When I burned Silverfen, I thought I was ending my own life. I thought I would die in the flames, or be executed, or disappear into the shadows. I never thought I'd find this. Darian turned to me, his gray eyes soft. What did you find? Peace. I reached up, touching his face. Hope. Love. I paused. You. He leaned into my touch, his eyes closing briefly. I found the same. When I first saw you at the keep, I wanted to hate you. I thought you were everything I despised. But the more I learned about you, the more I realized you were everything I had been searching for. Someone to fight beside? Someone to live for. He opened his eyes, and they were shining. I love you, Kael. Not because you're perfect. Not because you've never made mistakes. But because you're brave and strong and you never gave up. Because you saw the worst of the world and still chose to fight for the best of it. I felt tears prick my eyes. I love you too. I love you so much it terrifies me. Why does it terrify you? Because I've never had this before. I've never had someone to hold, someone to trust, someone to come home to. I'm afraid I'll lose it. I'm afraid I'll lose you. You won't. He pulled me into his arms, holding me tight. I'm not going anywhere. We're in this together, remember? Together, I whispered. We stood there in the moonlight, wrapped in each other's arms. The wind howled around us, but I felt warm, safe, protected. The weeks that followed were filled with small moments of joy. I helped Darian rebuild the territory, traveling to villages, listening to the people's concerns. I worked alongside Seraphine to bring the guilty to justice and the innocent to safety. I visited Riven in his new home, watching as he slowly healed from the trauma of his imprisonment. And every night, I returned to Darian. We talked for hours, sharing stories of our childhoods, our fears, our dreams. We argued sometimes, fierce and passionate, but always made up. We learned each other's rhythms, each other's silences. We grew together, two wolves who had been broken by the world and found solace in each other. One evening, Darian took me to a hidden meadow in the mountains. The grass was green and soft, dotted with wildflowers. A stream ran through the center, its waters clear and cold. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Beautiful, I breathed. It is. Darian took my hand, leading me to the center of the meadow. I used to come here when I was young, when the weight of being alpha felt too heavy. It was my escape, my sanctuary. And you're sharing it with me? He turned to me, his eyes serious. I'm sharing everything with you. My territory, my pack, my heart. Everything. He knelt before me and I felt my breath catch. Kael Blackwood, he said, his voice steady and sure. We've been through so much together. We've faced enemies and trials and our own demons. And through it all, you've been my partner, my confidant, my love. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small silver band. It was simple, elegant, with a single moonstone set in the center. I'm not asking you to be my political ally, he continued. I'm not asking you to be my husband for duty's sake. I'm asking you to be my mate, my partner in every way. For the rest of our lives. I stared at the ring, my heart pounding. Darian. I know we're already married, he said, a small smile crossing his face. But that was forced. Political. I want to do it properly. I want to choose you and I want you to choose me. Freely. Willingly. I felt tears stream down my cheeks. Yes, I said. Yes, I'll choose you. I'll choose you every time. He rose, slipping the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly, like it had been made for me. He pulled me into a kiss, deep and tender. I melted into him, my hands tangled in his hair, my heart soaring. I love you, I whispered against his lips. I love you too. He pulled back, his gray eyes shining. Forever. We stayed in the meadow until the stars came out. Lying on the soft grass, looking up at the sky, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Contentment. The simple, profound happiness of being exactly where I was supposed to be. We've come so far, I said. From enemies to allies to mates, Darian finished. Soulmates. Partners. I turned to look at him. The moonlight played across his face, softening the hard lines of his jaw. He was beautiful, in a way that had nothing to do with his appearance and everything to do with who he was. I never thought I'd have this, I admitted. I thought I'd always be alone. I thought I'd always be the monster. You're not a monster. He reached over, threading his fingers through mine. You're a survivor. You're a hero. And you're mine. I smiled, the expression coming easier than it used to. And you're mine. Always. We lay there in the meadow, two wolves who had found each other in the midst of chaos. The future stretched before us, uncertain but bright. There would be challenges. There would be trials. The wounds of the past would take time to heal, and there were still enemies who wished us harm. But we would face them together. Because that was what we had promised each other. In the keep, in the forest, in the council chamber. We had chosen each other, not because it was easy, but because it was right. And that choice would carry us through whatever came next. The moon rose high above us, silver and full. I felt Darian's arm wrap around me, pulling me close. Kael? Yes. Thank you. His voice was soft, almost reverent. For trusting me. For loving me. For staying. I turned, pressing a kiss to his jaw. Thank you for giving me a reason to stay. We fell silent, watching the stars wheel across the sky. In the distance, a wolf howled. Then another. Then another. The sound rose and fell, a song of unity and hope. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in years, I felt at peace. This was my home. This was my pack. This was my life. And I wouldn't have it any other way. The end. Thank you for walking with Kael and Darian through the snow, the fire, and the moonlight. Thank you for staying with them through the pain, the revelations, and the quiet moments of hope. Thank you for believing in their love, even when the world seemed determined to tear them apart. Your support means more than words can express. Every like, every share, every comment, every subscription helps us continue creating stories that touch hearts and inspire hope. You are the reason we tell these tales. You are the reason these characters live. If the weight of wolves touched your heart, please show your support. Red heart like this video. It helps others discover the story. Link share it with someone who loves romance and redemption. Bell subscribe and join us for more emotional journeys.